And there's some other pieces too where people are acting scenes, but it's all green screen. So we got most all of our footage in like 2.5 days at my friend's studio. And so that was a way to sort of dip my toe back in the water without having to, because I still work a full-time job, so this is something I'm doing on weekends, and I don't have to round up 50 people to do a big shoot on a stage. I am so envious of like what you guys are able to pull off to just build the set and to and have this core group of people that keep showing up and put boots on the ground. That is a difficult, arguably the most difficult part of the whole thing.
I think it's the most difficult.
Yeah, and so that's awesome that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, we all have talked beforehand today, and we all have various challenges that we face in order to do a fan film. And one of those challenges we talked about a few minutes ago was casting. I had a captain not show up for a fan film 3 or 4 times, so I'm like,
3 or 4 times?
Yeah.
Join the club.
Fire him after the first one.
I actually got a different and
The next one
back.
and I fired another woman, and you know, it's incredibly difficult to fire somebody who's volunteering to come out here and do something, and you're like, you just shafted a whole bunch of people. Yes, sir.
The worst part is if they're there, and then they're not there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes, we understand that.
Please laughing
Because
because
then
we've
you have to
had
go back and
that.
redo what you did already.
Yes.
We just did. In fact, that's one of the things we've got. One of our visual effect artists is rotoscoping 2 minutes 30 seconds, frame by frame. There's 29.97 frames per second. Folks, it's weeks away from being done, and it's just 2 minutes, and he's doing it for free. So this is a work of love. Getting back to your question, if you don't love it, don't do it.
I was going to say, 3 o'clock here, we're having the Potemkin Pictures panel, and we're going to be premiering one of our newest films. So come see that, and we can answer more questions about that. So.
Laugh at my peak sets.
Oh, I was just going to say, volunteers are both the greatest blessing of a fan film, and they are the biggest problem. You know, it's we do it. You know, we have lots and lots of volunteers on Axar, as well as lots of professionals we paid. The professionals we paid never had a problem. They showed up. They got their. You know, they knew they were working for the friends and family rate. You know, I got professionals who are making $500 a day, or $1,000 a day coming and working for $125, and they're like, "Hey, I'm a pro. I accept this rate." And you know that when you're paying them $125 or $100 or whatever, or I don't think we paid any pro more than $150 for a day when we were shooting. You know, their attitude was, "You're hiring me. Doesn't matter what I'm getting paid. I'm going to be a professional." And with volunteers, God bless them. And I volunteered on multiple fan films. But volunteers don't always quite get that. My attitude is, hey, I don't care if I'm paying you or I'm not paying you. I expect your A game. If you're not willing to give me your A game, please don't volunteer in the first place. But if you're a volunteer, if I go and volunteer, when I was up on Star Trek New Voyages volunteering, they got my A game. I had to take over producing one of their episodes when everyone got, David Gerald and half the team got sick. And I was like, well, I spent $500 to change my flight. I stayed 3 extra days. I was like, well, that's my A game. That's what I'm doing. And I have lots of volunteers like that who bring their A game. And that's kind of what you got to weed out in a fan film. Because volunteers aren't always doing it for the same reason you're doing it, right? And so so our attitude is, God bless you. This would not happen if it wasn't for volunteers. You're all awesome. And at the same time, if you can't cut it, let's cut you out early on so it doesn't affect the production. Because that's what you said. It's not the fact that they don't show up.
It's the fact that them not showing up affects your entire production.
I sat on the steps to the basement where we have our Klingon set, and Lee will tell you, I rewrote the episode in 25 minutes. Because someone didn't show up. I had to write them out, change the whole. Lee had a huge fight scene planned with this particular person. A huge fight scene. Lee was going to be a Klingon, and this other guy was going to be the captain, and they were going to have a fight scene, and it was going to be magnificent. Guess what? Ended up fighting a woman.
And losing.
I didn't change that part of the script.
We had much a similar thing when we did our vignette for Republic. One of our principals had a death in the family, so all the intent was there, all the desire was there, all the excitement was there, but there was no way we were going to let this girl, not be with her father when it was most necessary. There's no insurance covering the fact that we all flew out there to do this. But we got lucky in that we, found a young talented actress to, come in and step in, and we're able to use the other actress in another aspect somewhat later. So, life happens. Like getting sick, and not a kind. But professional productions have insurance to cover these things. We don't.
There's no bond. Hollywood has a bond for completion bond. You don't show up, the bond covers the expenses of the production. We don't have that. I mean, we don't have. Most of us have insurance, but it's just very marginal. I sign I don't know how many indemnities every time to hold harmless wherever I go to shoot. What are some of the other difficulties you've got?
Well, I just want to let everyone know this is a fun endeavor. So because we're talking about difficulties, we're not trying to dissuade you. We like everyone to make
It's
films.
a work of love.
It is, and I just wanted to
Labor.
to
Hard labor.
back to what Randy said. How many have seen the 3 Federation Pilots episodes? Have any of you? Out of
Larry, are you
two out of the 3, the captain bailed. One captain just didn't show on shoot day, and the other captain bailed a week before we shot. So the captain in the Mud episode had 1 week to learn these lines in practice, and he was phenomenal. And then Extraction was actually written as a cameo, was for a camera test for an actor that we were going to cast in our forthcoming episode, Doppelganger. And he decided at the last minute that we weren't big enough for him, so he just didn't show. Of course, we had everyone there to shoot, so all of us behind the scenes people, Dan had the most acting experience because he does do stage acting, so he showed me how to push the button on the camera, and he went and put a uniform on, and so, yeah, if people don't show up, that's a big problem. What I do try to do personally is I try to have about twice as many extras scheduled to show up that I need, because inevitably at least 3 or 4 of them actually become a speaking part, and then some of the other extras just don't show up anyway, so I usually end up with just what I need, but I double book all my extras to make sure that we are not just shutting down.
Mark must have had something here too that's very relevant.
Oh yeah, well, perhaps some of your actors don't show up at the last minute. I'm not even particular, but the actors may not have learned their lines.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I send an email
so
every
suddenly
day for
it's
the
like,
last 2 weeks.
I
Know
can't
your
be
lines.
bothered with this, or I don't return a call or whatever because they didn't do the work.
Yep.
And so luckily I didn't have that happen on this production. That's happened to me in the past on my last film I did. The guy didn't bail on me, but I almost wish he would have. Because what was basically, this was an old film I did, which was basically like 5 lines, and he hadn't prepared at all, and what should have been about a 15-20 minute thing, once the cameras and lights were set, turned into over an hour and a half to get a good line reading out of him. And he stumbled over stuff, and he read it with the wrong inflection. He didn't really even process what it was that he was supposed, like what the character was before he came completely unprepared. And suffice it to say, I have not seen that actor in anything else in the market since.
I got two quick things I'll mention.
One, when we were shooting Prelude to Action, our director rewrote lines for Richard Hatch. We were rewriting before, up to the shooting, the week of the shooting. Excuse me, the script was pretty much locked the week before, but Christian decided to rewrite Richard Hatch's lines, which was all well and good, but he didn't give Richard Hatch the script. So we shoot up on the day of shooting, and all of a sudden we're filming, and Christian going, "Wait, those aren't the lines." And so Richard, he has to then feed Richard all the lines for him. Now, Richard, being the consummate pro, was able to nail it. But hey, that wasn't Richard's fault. That was the director's fault, right? And the other thing I'll say is, when we shot the Vulcan scene, which is the 3-minute scene you can see on our website, one, as far as budget, that cost us about $15,000 to shoot that one day, but it was all professional crew, right? And that's kind of the benchmark we were using for, it was $15,000 a day. But anyway, literally the night before that shoot, and that we got the crews, everyone showing up, and about 10 o'clock at night, Robert Burnett, the director, called me and says, "We had a great actress, Anna Alexander, who was in Femme Fatale. She's gorgeous, like 6 foot tall. She was going to play our Vulcan. She's got the flu," and she's like, and we're like, "Oh," and I'm panicking, and Rob's like, "I'm going to ask my friend." And he asks his friend Kim Alexander. She's a professional actress. She shows up in the morning. She's learned her lines. The makeup gets adjusted for her and everything, and the results speak for themselves. But sometimes it's not the actor's fault also. But
Sure.
there are other situations. You either get influenza or you get but the pros can adjust to those things. Whether it was Kim in the Vulcan scene or Richard in Prelude, the pros, that was one of the greatest joys of working on Prelude, was me watching professionals like Gary Graham, who's here, or Kate Vernon, or JG, just watching them work. It was just a joy.
So we do have fun, and we do love it. And I mean, one of my greatest joys, and Lee may recall this, I was filming an episode production, short film vignette, not very long ago, and I'm sitting there watching this beautiful presentation. They're doing everything right, everything is gorgeous, and I forgot to turn the camera on. I had gotten so involved in watching them act, and like, oh my God, this is Star Trek. Oh my God, this is. Oh crap! I didn't turn the camera on. The last question for today, I'm going to ask each of us to tell what is in the plans for the future, and I'll start again with Joe.
Oh, okay, great. We do have a Bourne story that we're working on. We got some good ones, got some reunion films still, but don't want to give out too much away. But we'll be on YouTube. We got some good ones coming up.
So Star Trek Republic has been branded to Star Trek Republic 2.0, and we're going to try to put out something that kind of tells our story within the time allotted, so 2 15-minute-ish episodes. So that we're going to film this spring, but we're waiting for the sets to get more ready down in Kingsland, and because all that was going on. So we were delayed, but for a really good reason. Other than that, anything going on at Survey Studios, I'd be happy to participate in. Anything on the East Coast, Northeast, Maine's a great place to film. I'd be, Trek, non-Trek, I'd love to do it. I can travel probably once a year on my fund budget.
Okay, I think I mentioned it in the opening, but I'll just re-mention it. So at Warp 66 Studios, we're in the middle of filming 2 episodes right now. One is a Star Wars Star Trek crossover. One is a director's cut of the Equinox film that was released a few years ago that I'm going to finish and re-release. And then we're shooting a longer film called Doppelganger, which is a story written by Dan, my cameraman.
next 2 episodes of the 4 Years War. So the script is locked. We're talking to actors now, and we hope to have it mostly in the camp by the end of the year.
The only thing that we've got planned in the coming year is we're still filming 1 episode per month. I'm sorry, 1 short film per month. And we will continue to do so. We've got budgeted through the end of the year, through donations, through April. We're continuing to make improvements on the studio itself. The second air conditioning is scheduled to be installed. You know, they quoted me $600 to install that stupid air conditioner.
Throw it on a table.
No, it's got to have that out. Blue Magical.
Yeah.
Cut a hole in the wall.
That's what I want to do.
We're also planning on building the shuttlecraft.
That's right. We are going to build a shuttlecraft. And it's not going to be the Jack 22-foot thing. No. Lee keeps saying, well, we got to have it 12. I'm like, 8. 12? No, 8. It will be 8 foot. Sorry, Lee.
I believe I'm the only one up here that is actually in the middle of an Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign. So before I talk about the future, please contribute to our campaign if you can. www.theromulanwar.com. It'll be on for about another week. We have filmed we've done most of our principal photography. A lot of what we have left to do is post-production, and there's still some more scenes that we want to shoot too. We hope that the Romulan War will be done by the end of the year. A lot of that is contingent on whether we hit our fundraising goal or not. And if we don't, it will take longer. Because I'm going to have to find other ways to either rework the script or scale down the budget and adjust. So, and then after that, I have a non-Trek project I'm working on with some producers in Nashville. And ideally, the Romulan War will be well received. And I do have an idea that sort of takes place in that time period that would be a more traditional shot on a set, stunts, props, the whole 9 yards. But that's, at this point, wishful thinking, provided I can get through the next year without going crazy or killing myself. So,
I'd like to step back out of the audience for a second and ask the panel a question, particularly you. Just from a confusion standpoint, did you do anything or think anything about naming it the Romulan War, knowing that there was a series out for years called the Romulan War made by Lee Retro?
that was a subject of a lot of debate. First of all, the project has had 3 different names. We were initially calling it Raptor's Wing, the Romulan War. And there was some debate in our group that for people who were not super hardcore Star Trek fans, that they wouldn't. In other words, it would be easier to find us on a search engine if we were called Romulan War versus Raptor's Wing of the Romulan War.
Sure.
And Lee's project was Star Trek Romulan Wars, right? And but having said that, we thought it was plus, there is that Ken Burns' The Civil War, and our format sort of adopts that sort of that feel. So that was a little bit of a debate about whether to call it Romulan War or Raptor's Wing. And it used to be called Starfleet Secret Files Presents or something, and the Romulan War was going to be season 1 of Starfleet Secret Files. So every year we would do a whole different piece of the Star Trek mythology that hadn't been explored. So,
Did you talk to Lee at all?
yeah, I talked to Lee early on when we were looking for models, for CGI models. And
I didn't think you wanted me to be a mom.
CGI models.
We couldn't CGI you well enough. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Alec can verify this. Let's go back. I just got an email from one of my actors about the shoot. I won't be able to make it.
Oh boy.
You're fired.
I want to thank everybody for coming out. Are there any other questions in the audience?
General, thank you to everyone in the panel for all the thousands of hours of work.
Well, thank you for
Thank
watching.
you so much.
And anyway, thank
Do
you.
come
Chris,
back
for
at
having
3
us
o'clock
in
for our
here.
next panel for.
Chris was